if I had a doctor's appointment, right, I'd pick up the phone, we'd be on Zoom, talk about symptoms, et cetera, and then of course go about whatever diagnosis, prescription, et cetera. So how does that work from a veterinary perspective? Is it the same? Do we have a producer in the barn or an animal caretaker in the barn on a phone doing a Zoom call with the vet? Is it pictures? Is it uploading video? What does a typical telemedicine visit look like?
Yeah, good question. So right now we're collecting photos, videos, symptomatic information on a daily basis. So all the information that are traditionally going on to paper barn sheets and much more are being collected by caregivers that are filling out these digital daily checkups once, twice, sometimes 3 times a day if they're really on top of things and spending a lot of time in the barn. And so what veterinarians are doing is that information, the important information, gets centralized into what we call a farm feed, which looks and acts a lot like a Facebook news feed. Some people are calling us the Facebook of pork production because we sort of borrowed some of those functionalities because that's how our minds are learning to digest a lot of information right now. You see the same thing on LinkedIn, for example. These feeds are important and there's a lot of psychology behind how they function and how we work with them. So veterinarians are spending time on the farm feed. They're getting alerts when events that cross a certain threshold. It may be mortalities, it may be symptomatic information. And this is a really big one, right? Because hearing about mortalities is one thing, and yes, that's a big problem, but symptomatic information also is going to be even, I would argue, more important because it can help you avoid the mortality problems. And so we're collecting that information. And so veterinarians may see an event come through on the farm feed and get an alert, and they'll take a look into probably some context around the event. So what was happening on the farm yesterday, which now they have digital access to instead of having to maybe call and chase down a producer to get information, when in the meantime they have 15 other phone calls and text messages coming in, and it's just hard to remember all this stuff. So we present all the information in a couple of clicks for the veterinarians, and most of the time what they're doing is using photos and videos coming directly from the caregivers to oftentimes make diagnosis in the app. And I know you've got a large veterinary audience, so I learned to be careful on that word. But what we see happening in the field is 95% plus of the diagnosis that are being made are not getting lab confirmation. And so we have separated into 2 different types of diagnosis in the app, a clinical and a lab confirmed diagnosis. And some veterinarians choose to make the diagnosis in the app. And when they do that, the caregivers and field managers associated with that farm are automatically alerted to what the diagnosis was. And they may also add some treatment recommendation there. But the photos and videos are incredibly helpful. And really one of the coolest things for me to see as a former producer when we launched Every Pig at RC Family Farms was just looking at closeout reports never gives the full story of what actually happened on the farm, right? You could have some very tough sources of pigs that got cycled 2 or 3 times to a really good caregiver who might have done a great job with the pigs, but the mortality numbers and feed conversion might not confirm that. And one of the cool things we saw when we turned on Every Pig at RC was the stickiness and the communications with our growers really improved a lot. And a lot of those caregivers that we thought maybe were kind of C-level caregivers, we saw them become A and B level caregivers because they were getting veterinary responses. And one of the interesting things along those lines were when they would get a veterinary response, we saw most caregivers are more than willing to do a postmortem. Most caregivers will say if they get a response, they don't want to just cut open a pig and do the work for no reason. But when they get a response from these veterinarians, you see the engagement from caregivers go up dramatically. And so that was something that's really encouraging for us to see with our user base.